You are listening to Lovely Talks Heavy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lovely Talks Heavy. I am your host, Lovely, and I discuss everything I enjoy with regard to heavy music. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode featuring my friend Tino. We had a lot of fun making this episode, and while I was nervous about the fact that I did not have a strict script from which to read word for word, I powered through it, and it also helped my situation that Tino did a great job as well. And I hope that you enjoy when guests come on to your favorite podcasts, because you can expect more of that from this one. Now, upon seeing the title of this episode, you're probably thinking, what the fuck, Lovely? As you rightfully are. But don't worry, I'm not transforming this podcast into an experience centered around video games. That would be absurd, considering that I am not good at video games. I probably haven't played more than 10 video games in my whole life. That's probably a lie. Hold on, let me check my Steam library. Yeah, that's a lie. The point is that I'm not a gamer, and another point is that I used clickbait on you, so sorry for the deceiving title. When I say it's a video game podcast, I mean it's... I'm gonna talk about a video game in this episode, that is Hail to the King, Deathbat. If you're a fan of Avenged Sevenfold, this might sound familiar to you. So, yeah, it's with regard to heavy music. Avenged Sevenfold made the game. That's why I'm talking about it in this episode. So, spoiler alert for the episode ahead. If you haven't played the game and would really like to and really care about spoilers, then you should probably stop listening now. But I'm going to assume that you all either don't care about spoilers or have already played the game from this point forward. It's been 4 years since the game came out, so I don't see how you couldn't have. It's your own fault if you let the episode play on and let yourself be spoiled. So if you do care about spoilers, go get yourself the game. It's $5 on Steam. See you in 10 hours. Hail to the King Deathbat first came about in October 2014 as a mobile app through Apple and Google Play. It would later be put up on Steam and also now has a soundtrack out. I first got it in its mobile release, then got the PC version, and I have logged so many hours on this one game in both incarnations. I'm doing this episode as a retrospective on the game. I actually did make a review when it first came out, please don't look for that on my YouTube channel, but I didn't even complete the game, which in my unprofessional opinion seems to be kind of an important thing when reviewing a game. It'd be like now if I only listened to the singles off an album and did a full track-by-track review of that album and expected you to take my opinion seriously on that. My initial and incomplete opinion on this game was quite rose-colored, considering that I was in the midst of a manic obsession surrounded around Avenged Sevenfold, which is something that happens with me quite often. Like, my attention is more focused on one band or a TV series or a film, and oftentimes I'll revisit some of these bands and the like, and Avenged Sevenfold is one of those bands that I tend to look back towards often. But now, in this era post-Death of the Rev, these manic obsessive revisitations tend to be just nostalgia about life before the Rev died than anything else, really. Now, considering a few factors, A, I am not in the midst of a manic obsession centered around Avenged Sevenfold currently, B, I have played the game in full multiple times, and C, I have experienced the game in both its mobile and PC versions, I feel I can give a complete and thorough review of this game. Firstly, let's talk about what led to the creation of the game. M. Shadows, the vocalist of Avenged Sevenfold, was the main point of contact to the band in the game's creation and then later press. He noted that during a lot of the band's free time, like during travel or waiting to get on stage for a show or something, they'd be spending a lot of times on their phones. This led to a question of, what if we made something where people could similarly pass time on their phones? And thus the process of Hail to the King Deathbat came about. They partnered with Subscience Studios to make this happen. 2 years and one bad promotional miniseries of the same name later, we are introduced to the game Hail to the King Deathbat. Let's talk about that miniseries. It's bad. Did I mention that? It's bad. I was gonna look for it on YouTube to remember just how bad it was for this review, and it doesn't appear to be up anymore. Whether this is due to the negative feedback that it received, or there's no need to promote a game that's been out for 4 years, at this point it's a big question mark for me. Though if I did have to guess, It probably is due to the fact that the game has been out for 4 years and there's no need to promote it. I mean, come on. Anyways, to the best of my recollection, there were about 6 episodes, each about 2 to 3 minutes long, and the purpose was to establish the lore of the world of the game, which is fine, I guess. Just unfortunate how bad it was. Animation was, dialogue was, pacing was unfortunate. When you only have 2 minutes per episode of a 6-episode series to tell a story, it's gonna feel a bit rushed, to say the least. I wish it were still up so you could see for yourself if you haven't already. Regardless of the quality of the Hail to the King Deathbat series itself, I really don't think it was a necessary thing, promotion or otherwise. This is a game with Avenged Sevenfold's name attached to it. That alone is going to give a game some reach. I mean, if Call of Duty weren't already a popular video game series, franchise, whatever, when Avenged Sevenfold did the promotional song Carry On for that, you know, like that would have been like, yo, have you heard of this video game Call of Duty? Avenged Sevenfold have something to do with it now. Anyway, I'm running away from the script, and that's a bad sign. So, Avenged Sevenfold's name is going to give a game some reach. That, paired with the fact that a chunk of their audience enjoy video games in some capacity. I mean, this is an assumption I'm making right now, but I mean, come on. It would be enough to sell the game significantly. That aside, though, the story that is told in the miniseries is already in the game's intro with much better artwork, and yeah, although I do appreciate the sort of tone that the series had in, this is what happened so far, now it's up to you to complete the story. Please buy Hail to the King Deathbat on Apple and Google Play now. Speaking of that story, though, let's talk about it, okay? It could be better, as any story could be, probably, but considering that it's Avenged Sevenfold attached to this game, it makes sense that this is the kind of story being told. I mean, it's a Jesus allegory. The main character, Andronicus, whom you play as, is the savior and king of a land plagued by evil. Jesus allegory. The whole lore of it, though, is... Okay, so you have these 3 gods who have a little wager amongst themselves. They're like, hey, I wonder what would happen if we made a planet where there are people and living things and stuff with a sense of morality, like, would that world succumb to evil, or would lawful good prevail? 2 of the gods who remain completely unnamed for the whole of the game are like, we believe in the power of good. But the other god, Kerberos, he's a little bastard. He's like, nah. The moment the first being comes to our little craft project planet, it will be doomed to a little shithole of evil. So they make this planet called Hades and put a whole variety of beings on it and let them fight amongst themselves for a few thousand years, almost like the Grandmaster in the Marvel comics. Hades is looking to be the doomed evil shithole that Kerberos predicted it to be, but then Jesus, Andronicus, is born. He, along with his faithful companion, the Reverend Tholomew Plague, start to turn the tides of the war that plagued this land and banish away the evil. Andronicus becomes king because he, did that. He killed evil stuff really well. And the Rev is his right-hand man or whatever, and now they have control of this sacred talisman, a MacGuffin that is the vessel of all power and magic on this world. Everyone's favorite little bastard god Kerberos is like, bitch, I wanna win this wager! So he kills Andronicus, and then the Rev breaks the sacred talisman, replaces Jesus King with a dark clone version of Jesus King, and havoc is once again wreaked across the land. The other 2 gods grow wise to this scheme, though, resurrect Andronicus, but somehow not the Rev, and send him on a quest to save the world as an undead bag of bones, and thus the logo of Avenged Sevenfold the Deathbat was born. I mean, this is cool, but I have a few questions. I think the question of morality is an interesting one to bring up in this game. However, could it be, touched on more? For instance, what defines good and evil on this world? How do the 3 gods feel about the concept of good and evil? Of course, Kerberos was betting on evil prevailing, but is that due to the fact that he has no faith in mortal beings to uphold good? Or is this just due to the fact that he's a bastard who loves to do bastardly things? Are all the creatures and beings that were placed on this world aware that they were injected with different moral alignments for the sake of a bet, or do they feel that the choices that they make are their own and not sourced in part from a celestial design? Would some beings that one would consider, quote, evil, unquote, consider themselves good, unquote, and vice versa? Have the three gods considered that perhaps whether good or evil prevails lies not in simple moral alignment, but also in circumstance that allows one or the other to flourish? Isn't it a bit ironic that there are two good gods and one evil god, and somehow the evil one outweighs the good too, metaphorically speaking? When Andronicus started to turn things around on Hades and good was finally prevailing, he was like just banishing the evil far away. I know I said he killed bad stuff really well, but I mean he banished stuff. Anyway, so when he did that, wouldn't it be more interesting to see some of that evil turn to good because it's the reigning moral and therefore the most convenient way to live if they want to live? Perhaps some of the people that were on the side of good turned to evil because, well, good is reigning, it wasn't achieved in a peaceful way, and they're shown that there's no option or hope for a peaceful option in this world. Are there any instances where good and evil aren't so simple for the people of this world? You know what? I think there's an answer for that last one. And the answer is that it isn't so simple. You play as Andronicus, who forged himself into an icon of all that is good in the land, just like Jesus, until Kerberos drops Dark Andronicus in there to fuck shit up again. And people start to think, well, that's odd. Just a moment ago he was a good king. Is he sick or something? You know what? I'm just kind of unsure about this, but you know what? I trust you, Andronicus. I trust you. Which probably says something about people who trust the leader's every decision way too easily, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I think it goes deep. Consider the creatures that you encounter and have to kill in order to get coins to buy powerful swords and extra lives because you suck at this game. The lore of the world might suggest that the creatures that attack you in the game are just a symptom of the darkness and evil that's flourishing due to the reign of Dark Andronicus. However, I think there's plenty of creatures in the world of the game that arguably aren't evil. For instance, I would say that most of the backcountry level, which is a desertscape where you have to navigate caves for most of the level, is a good example. You encounter creatures like scorpions and trolls and dragons, all of which kill you over and over and over again, and it's annoying, but it brings up a question of, for me anyways, is this a good means to an end? You're killing all of these creatures just because they're in your way or because you need the coins to get a better sword or more potions or something, and of course they're trying to kill you too because what's a game without challenge? But think of why that might be. All of the creatures in this backcountry level are what I can assume are just nature's creatures in this world. They have no motivation other than to live peacefully amongst themselves and protect their home. If I were a scorpion in this world and some random skeleton man just came up in my cave swinging a huge-ass magic sword at my small body, you know I'll be taking a few hit points off of his ass, with my ass, my poison dart tail ass. I've lost the plot. Of course, you can't reason with the scorpion to have it not stab you with its ass because, I mean, scorpions can't be taught human language, and also, even if you could speak to a scorpion in this game, there's no real opportunity to make choices with dialogue or anything. The point is, though, that it makes you think. Even though Andronicus is undead now, he would still be a proponent of ultimate good, which in my opinion includes not mercilessly swinging your sword at innocent creatures of nature. Even in the bonus levels where you get the opportunity to get more coins, there's a gremlin creature who runs away from you because the more you hit it, the more coins it drops, and once you kill it for good in that bonus level, it doesn't come back once you replay the bonus level. So now you think, well, for the other bonus levels, I'll just kill it mostly, not entirely, so I'll be able to get more coins in the long term. And that just makes you think, that's kind of fucked up, huh? It's another innocent creature who wants to live and not bleed coins, and I'm just using it as another means to my end. Perhaps in being resurrected, Andronicus could consider how death felt and how he inflicted it onto others. Even if some of those he did kill deserved what they got, he might start to question if the bloodshed in which he is engaging is a suitable price for the peace he wants to restore. Maybe he could question the two unnamed gods who are rooting for good and resurrected him. Maybe there's a dialogue between them where he asks, why am I the only one here that has to clean up the mess that you guys made? I mean, even in death I'm being told, yeah, so shit's fucked, so here's a mop to clean it up, bye. And you won't even give me my friend the Rev back to fight by my side until I open up all the chests with the hidden artwork on them, and by this point I'll have defeated all these enemies, so what's the goddamn point? Perhaps we could have an option through dialogue and through action to have Andronicus turn evil. Maybe he merges with this dark clone, or perhaps in getting killed he is corrupted by Kerberos in some way, and he begins to feel satisfaction from committing heinous deeds. Perhaps it's a struggle for Andronicus to make certain choices, and he has to be reminded of what the goddamn mission is by the gods that resurrected him. That might also mess with the Jesus allegory that we're supposed to hold firm onto in the story, I suppose. I mean, it's kind of funny how the world of Hades was a doomed hell world until Jesus came along and saved everybody. Of course, though, if we were given the chance to explore shit like moral definition and the cost of means to desirable ends and even cool different dialogue options, then the game would cost more than $4.99 American US. But I think all of that would be more interesting than, you are Andronicus, here is a sword, use it to kill anything and everything that's walking towards you. Death is the answer to everything. You are Jesus. The ending cutscene suggests that there's going to be a sequel to the game, as it has Kerberos looking down from the sky at Andronicus the Revan, the witch who's been selling health potions to Andronicus for the whole of the game and saying that this isn't over. I really don't have hope for a sequel, as it's been 4 years at this point. But then again, games take time to make, Avenged Sevenfold are a busy band, and it's probably a little difficult to come up with more story for the established world, and, making games isn't writing albums, which, one of those two things is something that Avenged Sevenfold are used to. You take your pick. So probably if there was going to be a sequel, a Hail 2, the number 2, The King, Deathbat, we'll probably see some word about it in the next 2 years or so. I'm not holding my breath, so you shouldn't either. Let's talk about the actual gameplay and levels and shit. So, we have 7 levels, all inspired by iconic points in A7X's discography, all mostly distinct from each other. You start in Nightmare, where you fight Dark and Andronicus in what was your castle before it got usurped. You then go over to Unholy Confessions, where you fight Death itself in a church. You then go, but can't stay, in Bat Country and fight the Bat King. Onward to Babylon, inspired by the Beast and the Harlot, where you fight both the Beast and the Harlot being the real boss, but the Beast being a real bitch to defeat too. You fall into the afterlife and fight Cain from the story of Cain and Abel, which inspired the song Chapter 4. The spirit of the Rev carries you up to a little piece of heaven where you have to fight the undead girl that fucked shit up there. Finally, you face off against Dark Andronicus once more in the wicked end in another castle. The gameplay is designed to be an overhead dungeon crawler, kind of like Legend of Zelda, which is specifically noted as inspiration behind the making of the game. The mechanics of the game are quite simple. There's 3 different combat actions that you can take: swinging your sword, shooting out magic from your bone hands, or a charged up magic attack based on whatever sword you are holding. My favorite being the lightning sword, because it has a charged magic lightning attack that hits certain radius around you, which is so convenient when you are in an area with so many enemies trying to murder you to death all at once. The mobile app version of the game would have buttons on the side of your screen for you to press with one hand for these attacks, while the other would be used for dictating movement. The PC version allows you to set whatever controls are most comfortable for you, so if you're using a keyboard, that's probably WASD, click mouse buy. I prefer using a controller for the game, however. The one downside to using a controller, though, is that when you want to pause the game, that doesn't translate over to the controller. You have to lift your hand to the mouse and then click on the skull between your health and mana bars at the top of the screen, which is annoying when you're trying to get to a potion because you're being crowded by so many monsters at once. Let's talk about the different swords that you can get, because that ties into another point that I want to point out. In the mobile app version of Hail to the King Deathbat, you could purchase with real human money and not the fake game coin currency character avatars inspired and probably designed by the members of Avenged Sevenfold at the time, so we're talking Aaron Ilj version. These were just basically skeletal, badass fantasy versions of what the band envisioned themselves to be. Each of them came with their own sword, with its own special charged magic attack to complement the avatars, Aaron's being the most strongest, but not my favorite. I bring this up because in the PC version of the game, the purchasing of these avatars was completely removed. Instead, the swords that they came with were immediately on the marketplace shelf along with potions, extra lives, and other swords that were already there. And as you completed levels, you'd get a message saying that a friend has awakened in the crypt. And now you have the option to play as one of the members of Avenged Sevenfold without having to pay $2.99 per avatar to get a better weapon, which, in retrospect, makes me feel a little cheated out of $6, but hey, it's fine. I purchased Aaron and Sin, thank you very much. I think it's better that they went this route instead of translating the purchasable avatars over to the Steam version, because it gives the opportunity for everybody to experience playing as all of the members of the band for at least one level, to take in the character design, to take in the dialogue that each character blurts out at random intervals as you're playing, despite how cheesy "sin to win" or "mind if I shred all in your face" sounds. Both of those come from the Sinister Gates character, that one being my favorite design, but man, that dialogue is painful. It also means that if somebody has a particular favorite member of the band, they have that option to play as them. It's gonna be, something if it turns out that there is going to be a sequel to the game, and instead of Aaron Ilj, we'll have Brooks Wackerman to play as. Will that be semi-justified in at least having new and different weapons to pair with each character inspired by the band? Who knows? I just realized that if we get another Hail to the King Deathbat game, then we're probably going to have to be faced with the reality that there's going to be a level or two inspired by a song or two off of the bad album, The Stage Nobody At Me. I hate that album so much. Anyways, okay, what else can I say about the gameplay? Well, for the most part, it's basically hit a button, try not to get killed, but one of the coolest things I think is that when you're introduced to a puzzle, the game really forces you to think about how to go about solving it. I died so much in the Little Piece of Heaven boss battle because I didn't realize that it wasn't reliant on damage to the boss, but rather tricking the boss into damaging the environment. In Babylon, there's a series of doors that you have to unlock to be able to get to the castle key to get to the boss battle, but you can only open them in a certain order, and sometimes they're really hard to get to because you're walking a thin-ass piece of wood. So it becomes a game of paying attention to your environment. The same sort of thing happens in the Afterlife level, where you have to stand on the gateways in the level in a certain order, which again forces you to pay attention to your environment and navigate it really carefully. Because if you step on one of those gateways in the wrong order, then you have to start the sequence all over again, which got quite annoying until I realized what was up. But when you do figure out those puzzles, it makes you feel like a badass, a real smarty pants for figuring it out. The, of course, biggest thing I want to talk about RE this game is the inclusion of the Rev into the story of the world. This, of course, is in tribute to the one member of Avenged Sevenfold who, in my opinion, created the best bits of a 7 Nexus discography. Not only that, he was massively hilarious, never failed to make people laugh, was skilled as fuck as a drummer, and according to the credits of the game, was the Tetris champion. Of course, they were going to add a tribute to the Rev in there, but looking back, it feels awkwardly weaved in there. I didn't hate it, don't get it twisted. The inclusion of that tribute made a bitch cry, but considering some things I've already pointed out, it feels strange story-wise that you're not able to have the Rev by your side from the get-go. Like, the two unnamed gods saw that he and Andronicus fought side by side. Wouldn't they at least consider bringing the Rev back to help Andronicus in his quest? Or wouldn't Andronicus think that, hey, I can be resurrected, then so can my good putty pal, or something, that would be a cool option for having multiplayer, like one person play as Andronicus, the other play as the Rev, but again, that would just make it more than $4.99, so I'm getting off the script again. I mean, yes, that's an element that isn't absent from the game, but okay, so at the beginning of the game, you're in the crypt where you can buy potions and shit, right? And in one of the upper levels of the crypt, there's the spirit of the Rev, and you can approach him to unlock some story, and also tears if the Rev was your favorite member of Avenged Sevenfold 2. You go through the whole game unlocking pieces of hidden art, one per level, including the bonus levels, after which point you go back to the crypt where the Rev is, and you get more dialogue, more tears, and holy fuck, what is this, a new sword? He gifts you the sword that he wielded battling evil with Andronicus, which is like, hey, thanks, pal, but you couldn't have gifted a brother this shit sooner. I know the story of the game dictated that he wouldn't have been able to do it or some shit, blah blah blah, and suspension of disbelief, etc, etc. But now what's cool about the sword is that it's stupidly overpowered, and its charged magic attack summons the Rev for a brief period in battle with you, which is neat and useful for when you're getting overcrowded by enemies. He can also do that magic lightning attack that I really like for the lightning sword to help cover your ass. The big obvious drawback being that when you summon the Rev, it drains your magic super quickly, but hey, you're getting a lot of cool shit with the sword, so maybe expect that heavy magic cost just a little bit. Oh, but wait, by this point that you've got the Rev's overpowered sword and you'll already have completed the game and you won't get too much chance to play with him. Oh, what's that? The game has a nightmare mode where all of the enemies are harder to kill and the color palette is edgy and obnoxious. Sign me the hell up. No, to be honest, playing in nightmare mode with the Rev sword throughout was barely a challenge. Because while your magic does drain quickly when you summon him, there's like these goblets that recharge your magic when you stand next to them placed throughout all the levels, and there's like a lot of them, so it doesn't even feel like a big drawback. So the only annoying part at that point just becomes the waiting game for your mana to fully charge up again. There's that, plus the fact that when you summon the Rev, he just takes off and kills whatever is in his path for the duration that he's there. Rev don't care, he's got a mission and he's not waiting for you, he's just gonna find shit to kill. I think something in retrospect that really would have made this a cooler feature of the game is that if in Nightmare mode you had less of these magic charging goblets throughout, and pairing that with instead of summoning the Rev for a set amount of time, he stays until he's dealt a certain amount of damage overall to enemies in your path. That, or have the Rev be able to take damage as well, because honestly when he's out there he's clipping through shit, and when the Bat King in Bat Country is shooting flames at you, the Rev's not even fazed by the flames and he's just, letting himself be showered in flame. That's cool, like honestly, let him take some damage, like this is supposed to be Nightmare mode and I have the option to play as the Rev, kind of don't let whatever. All of this would just make the decision to summon the Rev more calculated and force the player to actually use their sword to hit enemies more instead of letting the Rev just kill everything in your path and letting you pick up the coins that were dropped along the way. Plus, it would make the boss fights more challenging in Nightmare mode with the Rev sword. The only boss fight that remained challenging in Nightmare mode was the Harlot in Babylon, because that's a kind of puzzle in determining, which clone is the real one. The other boss battles that wouldn't be affected by the presence of the Rev are a Little Piece of Heaven, where damage dealt to the boss isn't a factor at all, and the second half of the fight with Eric Andronicus in the Wicked End, where you have to shoot magic and dodge magic attacks in this magic sky tunnel thing, which if you played the bonus levels, you'll know that this is what you are being trained for, which I do admit that is kind of cool. Overall, this game is really fun. It really is. Just don't think about it too much. If you do, then you'll find yourself wishing that you could have spent more than $5 on it. I mean, I have fun every time I go to replay it, and when I complete it, I think to myself, good job, Lovely. You completed a real video game. You deserve a pat on the back. And then I pat myself on the back. So, what did you think of this game? Hail to the King, Deathbat. Would you have any analysis of the game different from the one that I offered in this episode? Do you agree with all of my points that I made in this episode? Hit me up on social media on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, YouTube, and Mixcloud. I am LovelyMetalhead. Follow me on those platforms, why don't you? And bring a friend or two along with you. So some fun news, I now have a Ko-fi page. If you don't know what Ko-fi is, it's a place that offers the opportunity for people to monetarily support creators, kind of like Patreon, but without the monthly required commitment on your bank account. I just made a page on there because while I do love making this podcast, I figured that it was high time I got some monetary support from it. I'm not expecting sponsors to roll in anytime soon, especially with the kind of content that I make, but if there's anybody out there that really likes what I do here and wants to send support by dropping a few dollars my way, I would absolutely appreciate it. Don't feel pressured if you can't. I understand. Just show your support by sharing the show. That's hella appreciated too. The link will be in the description of this episode. That is ko-fi.com/LovelyMetalhead. Hard to forget. Anyways, so stay tuned for next week when I offer the episode that I've been looking forward most to making yet. The track-by-track review of Sacrament of Sin by Powerwolf. Until next week, next Saturday, the next episode of Lovely Talks Heavy. You stay brutal, my friends. Goodbye.